Good morning, afternoon, and or evening, my sexy compatriots. This is the cup of coffee you all know I love, minty coffee. So today I'll be taking a look at the Engineer, a personal favourite of mine. Eng's one of those classes that is, lacking in the unlocks department.
Damn dagnabbit, I need some gun.
You know what we've never seen any kind of alternative for, though? Not even any real suggestions for it? Well, the Destruction PDA.
What? What the fuck?
Yep. The Destruction PDA. Confused? Well, bear with me, because I'd like to suggest what I believe to be a great gimmick for a Destruction PDA side grade that would add some interesting alternatives to Eng's setup. So what's one thing that Engineer suffers from? Getting that gear up. Well, the worst instance is in the coveted home of 6's 5CP maps, process being the most common example. As you may know, capping points on 5CP moves your spawn closer to mid each time, usually with capping the second to last spawn moving your spawn to mid. For NG, the issue comes when your lonely teleporter entrance gets left behind at your original spawn and you have to move it up, leaving your main buildings unprotected. In lieu of this, I'd like to propose a Destruction PDA alternative to improve this, but don't get me wrong, it will have a lot more applicability than just moving up stray buildings, yet not so much that it's a straight upgrade. The Risky Regen. The Risky Regen is a Destruction PDA whose main gimmick is returning metal to the Engineer when a building is manually destroyed based on multiple factors. By giving metal back to the Engineer when destroying buildings, this allows for a quick destruction of old backlines and quick reconstruction of a new backline for your team. The downside with the gimmick of manual metal restoration will ultimately be to decrease the Engineer's overall metal supply to compensate for the influx of metal he can now gain. Metal returned from destroyed buildings will be calculated based on the level of the building and in relation to the original cost it took to build a level 1 of that building, as well as the type. At level 1, buildings will restore 50% of their original build value, with a 25% increase per level. A sentry would give 65, 98, and 130. A dispenser would give 50, 75, and 100, and teleporters would give 25, 38, and 50. So the more valuable the building, the more metal you'll get back when it's destroyed. Also, dispensers will be given a unique trait that transfers any charges of metal to the Engineer at half the normal rate. At level 1, a dispenser will give you 20 metal regardless of where you are, at level 2 will give you 30, and at level 3 will give 40. Essentially, if you manually detonate a level 3 building, you'll be refunded the amount of metal it took to create a level 1 version of it. And the dispenser will give you metal no matter where you are on the map, save only having one charge of it. What we see from this so far is a PDA that gives some massive self-reliance to the Engineer by choosing when and where to destroy buildings to maximise the efficiency of his setups. The trade-offs, however, serve to mitigate this to a fairer extent. The first primary downside is that the Engineer's overall metal supply will be decreased by 25% from 200 to 150. This means that while you're getting more metal back, your max reserves are down and you can't reconstruct all the buildings you destroyed immediately. This also means that if you're letting your metal just build up in excess without utilising it, any metal transferred from your dispenser charge will simply add nil to your counter. Another downside metal-wise is that pickups from metal packs will be decreased by 50%. Since the Engineer's metal reserve is now 150, this means big metal packs would normally return that amount. With a 50% decrease, this goes down to 75. Since long-range metal supplying is the main gimmick, naturally we're going to weaken the traditional act of scavenging metal to compensate. Not a crippling downside, but one that encourages use of this new mechanic to keep your metal reserves in check. The next key downside is that buildings below 70% health will restore no metal to the Engineer. This means he can't get a cheeky detonation for free metal when he finds one of his buildings has been damaged by a splash class. However, if it's a hit scan class, then he has a little window of time to compensate. Another downside I will include comes when you consider the use of the PDA alongside the Widowmaker. Alone, it already allows for some great metal supply, but with the Widowmaker it would become downright crazy. In lieu of this, we will add a plus 66% metal cost to weapons that use metal as ammo. The use of ammo is important to keep in mind, as this won't affect the Rescue Ranger or any wrenches, as metal isn't their ammunition. So the Widowmaker's 30 metal shot becomes 50, giving you 3 shots with your decreased metal supply. Since this is a weapon based on utilising your metal supply defensively, it has to be weakened when it's being comboed with a weapon that uses metal offensively like the Widowmaker. So in summary, we have a PDA that explores the mechanic of manual detonation by restoring metal to the engineer, along with causing dispensers to only charge one bulk of metal but transfer it to the engineer wherever he is. Or in simple terms, the PDA allows for long-range metal pickup. To make up for it, the engineer's overall metal supply is lessened, punishing those who allow their metal to start bloating up, and massively increasing the cost of metal-reliant weapons. I think this would be a great addition that further adds to Engineer's possible mobility, at least being able to keep his gear moved up and not having to fall back too often to pick up buildings that are lagging behind. Because let's be honest, no one likes destroying level 3s they've worked so hard to upgrade, so at least having some kind of incentive to do so would circumvent this. What do you think of this idea? Think it could use some tweaking? I would love to hear your thoughts below. This has been the cup of coffee you all know and love, and as always, I shall see you next time, my sexy compatriots. Bye!